I was 66 years old the day my own son turned me into a homeless tourist in a city of gold, and if you had walked past me that night, you would not have recognized the woman I used to be. You would have seen only an aging mother in a wrinkled sundress sitting on a hard bench under glass towers that glittered like distant stars, clutching nothing. Not a bag, not a phone, not even a passport. You would have seen me watching cars slide by like silent ships of light while I tried to understand how the boy I had once rocked through fevers and thunderstorms had just traded me for a few days of luxury. And yet that same night, on that same bench, was the beginning of the greatest plot twist of my life. My name is Evelyn Carter, and I never thought my story would bring me to Dubai. When my son Jordan first called with the idea, his voice crackled through the phone, full of excitement. "Mom, you've spent your whole life working. Let me spoil you," he said, and I could hear the smile I had loved since he was a little boy. His wife Sabrina chimed in with her soft Greek accent, promising carefully curated itineraries and restaurant reservations. "You deserve to see the world, Evelyn," she insisted. For the first time in years, I let myself believe I wasn't just an obligation or a wallet with a heartbeat. I let myself believe I still had a place in my own son's life. The hotel they chose looked like something out of a movie, a glass and gold monument to excess, where the lobby smelled faintly of jasmine and polished marble. "We're staying at the Burj Al Sahar, Jordan," announced proudly as we checked in, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "One of the most expensive hotels in the world." "Don't argue, Mom. This is my thank you for 3 jobs and 30 years of sacrifice." I laughed and swatted his chest, pretending his words didn't make my eyes sting. In that shimmering lobby under chandeliers that looked like falling stars, I let my guard fall another inch. The morning it all began, I woke with a strange dizziness, the kind that makes the walls breathe just a little. The desert heat, rich food and excitement had tangled together in my blood. Over breakfast, I pressed a hand to my temples and murmured, "I think I just need to rest today." Sabrina's eyes widened in concern, her voice gentle and musical as she said, "Then you will stay by the pool and relax, Evelyn. We'll do the shopping for all of us." "Yes." She slid the room key across the table and added with a smile, "Give us your card and we bring you something beautiful." It felt natural, almost sweet to reach into my purse and hand over my credit card. "Get yourself something too," I said, kissing Jordan's forehead the way I had when he was small. "You both deserve it." By mid-afternoon, the dizziness had faded and restless energy took its place. The sun poured through the glass like molten gold as I walked through the lobby to the front desk, imagining Sabrina laughing over perfume counters and Jordan trying on watches. When I asked the clerk if he knew whether my son had left a message, his expression shifted in a way I will never forget. The polite hotel smile froze, then cracked. "Madam," he said carefully, "your son and his wife checked out this morning. They said you had already left for the airport." For a moment, everything went quiet like someone had hit mute on the whole world. "That's impossible," I whispered. "I've been here all day." The clerk, clearly uncomfortable, turned his screen toward me. There it was, the checkout receipt. Almost $8,000 charged to my card room service spa treatments shopping. "Where are my belongings?" I asked, and my voice sounded small even to my own ears. "They took all the luggage, madam," he replied. "They said you were meeting them at the airport." What came next felt like a slow, humiliating unraveling. The hotel manager was kind but immovable, his words wrapped in velvet and iron. Without a card, without identification, with my credit line stretched to its limit, I could not stay another night. The remaining charges they tried to place were declined. Policies, procedures, security. You hear those words differently when you realize they are the wall between you and a safe bed. Within an hour, I was no longer a guest. I was just an aging woman stepping out through revolving glass doors into the heavy desert air, with nothing but the dress on my back and a small, crumpled receipt in my hand. As evening folded itself over the city, the towers lit up like jewelry scattered on black velvet. Luxury cars slid past their windows dark, their engines silent and smooth. I wandered dazed until my legs trembled, then finally collapsed onto a metal bench near a bus stop, the seat cold, even in the desert night. I kept thinking of Jordan at 3 years old, crawling into my bed during thunderstorms and whispering, "I love you, Mommy," against my shoulder. "Where did you go?" I murmured into the traffic, not expecting an answer. Strangers passed some, casting quick, curious glances at the older woman sitting alone, but no one knew that my entire life had just been ripped away in a hotel lobby. Sometime around dawn, when the sky was just beginning to pale, I caught my reflection in a darkened shop window, hair, wild eyes, hollow dress, rumpled. I barely recognized myself. That was when I noticed him standing a short distance away, watching me, with an expression that was not pity, but recognition. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in an elegant suit that seemed to belong to the city's glittering skyline, not to the bus stop where I sat. His hair was more silver than black. His eyes, a warm, searching brown. He approached slowly, careful not to startle me, and when he spoke, his voice carried an accent that tugged at some buried memory. "Excuse me," he said quietly, "but are you all right?" I meant to say yes. I meant to arrange my face into something dignified and brush off his concern. Instead, the dam finally broke. Tears spilled hot and uncontrollable as I told this stranger everything, the words tumbling over each other, my son, the credit card, the luggage, the night on the bench. He listened without interrupting his gaze, never leaving my face, his brow tightening with each detail. When I finally ran out of words and air, he was silent for a heartbeat, studying me, with an intensity that made the hair rise on the back of my neck. Then he said very softly, "It is always strange and beautiful to meet an old love again, Evelyn." My heart lurched. My name in his mouth sounded like a memory. I stared at him, searching his face. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice rough. "Do we know each other?" A small, sad smile curved his lips as he answered, "You do not remember me, but I have remembered you for 40 years. His words settled over me like a warm wind from decades ago, stirring memories I had buried under years of exhaustion bills and single motherhood. 40 years, I repeated, tasting the disbelief on my tongue. He nodded, the corners of his eyes softening as he said, "My name is Samir Al-Hassan." Though when we knew each other, I was simply a medical student just trying to survive Chicago winters. The moment he spoke his name, something in my mind cracked open and light spilled through. I saw a cafeteria bathed in fluorescent glow, a young man with delicate shoulders and 2 large glasses, hunched over anatomy texts, his English hesitant, his smile shy. I saw myself 26 years old and running on caffeine and desperation, helping him sound out terms he had scribbled phonetically in the margins. I pressed a hand to my mouth as the memories sharpened. "Samir," I whispered. "Oh my goodness, you were so thin, so nervous, always apologizing for your accent." He laughed softly, a warm, deep sound that didn't match the timid boy he once was. "And you," he said gently, "were the only person in that entire hospital who looked at me like I belonged there." As the sun lifted the first faint gold above the rooftops, he helped me stand with a careful steadiness that made my chest tighten. His driver stepped out of a sleek black car parked nearby, waiting silently, another sign that Samir had grown into someone far beyond the young man I had once bought coffee for. He gestured toward the car. "Please come with me. You need food and rest. We will talk more soon." I hesitated, pride and fear tugging at me like opposing tides. But survival has a way of stripping pretense, and after a night on that bench, I had no strength left to argue with kindness. "Okay," I murmured. "Thank you." The car's interior felt impossibly soft, the leather cool against my legs. As we pulled away from the empty street, I let my head rest against the seat and exhaled for the first time in hours. Samir sat beside me, watching me with a concern so sincere it made my throat tighten. "You never married?" he asked gently, and I shook my head. "No. I came close a few times. Richard, then later Thomas. But Jordan always needed me, or I convinced myself he did." Samir nodded slowly, understanding more than I expected. "You gave up much for your son," he said, "even when he no longer needed you to carry the whole world alone." His tone was soft, not judging, but it still cut me in places I hadn't known were tender. As we drove through gates that opened automatically before us, I stared out at the sprawling estate beyond. It was beautiful in a way that felt unreal. White stone framed by palm trees, delicate arches, fountains sparkling like captured stars. "Samir," I asked quietly, "what exactly do you do now?" He smiled with a humility that felt almost impossible given the grandeur around us. "I am a doctor still, and a sheikh. The title is less important than the work, I promise. I have built hospitals, research centers, a medical school or two." His cheeks warmed as he added, "I have been fortunate." That was the understatement of the century. But what struck me most was not his wealth, but the way he spoke, as if none of it defined him. Inside his home, servants appeared with quiet efficiency, offering food, water, warm clothes. Even disheveled, exhausted, and wearing yesterday's sweat, they addressed me with the same respect they gave Samir. I followed one of them down a hallway lined with art and soft golden light, while Samir remained at the entry, speaking in rapid Arabic to a member of his staff. When I reached the guest room he had offered me, I stood at the doorway in stunned silence. It was larger than my entire home back in the States, with high ceilings and a bed draped in linens that looked like clouds. For a moment I forgot the bench, the cold metal beneath me, the loneliness that had seeped into my bones. I forgot Jordan's betrayal. All I remembered was a young man from 4 decades ago standing in a cafeteria, asking shyly if he could practice his English with me. I showered slowly, letting warm water wash away the grime and fear of the night. When I emerged, a soft robe waited for me, and a tray of tea and fruit sat by the window. I wrapped my hands around the warm cup and stared out at a garden filled with roses and jasmine, listening to the distant murmur of fountains. For the first time since the hotel lobby, my heartbeat stopped racing. Later that morning, after sleep had taken the sharp edges off the night, I found Samir in the garden under a trellis, heavy with flowers. He stood when he saw me, and the warmth in his eyes almost undid me. "You look rested," he said, pulling out a chair for me. "Did you sleep well?" I nodded, unable to find the words, for the gratitude swelling in my chest. He poured tea with steady hands and watched my expression closely. "Evelyn," he began softly when I returned to Dubai after my residency, I told myself I would forget you. But some people, he paused, breath, catching faintly, are impossible to forget. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice wavered. "Samir, we barely knew each other." His gaze did not waver. "We knew enough," he said. "Enough that when I walked into this garden and found you sitting there today, I felt like a missing piece had been returned to me." His confession stunned me into silence. Part of me wanted to retreat, to insist his memory had painted me better than I had ever been. But another part, the tired, bruised part of me, felt seen for the first time in decades. As he spoke about the past, about the coffee I once bought him when I was too poor to buy my own lunch, about the night he almost confessed his feelings before I was called away to help a struggling child, I realized something painful and beautiful. At once I had been so busy surviving that I never noticed the man in front of me offering a tenderness I had desperately needed. When he admitted quietly I left Chicago with a broken heart, I felt a shift inside me, like a door unlocking after years of rust. But before I could speak, before I could decide what this new revelation meant, Samir's phone rang. He excused himself, walking a few steps away as he answered in clipped, urgent Arabic. When he returned, his expression had hardened into something protective. "Evelyn," he said, sitting beside me, with deliberate calm, "I have news about Jordan." He sat beside me with the quiet composure of a man who had spent his life delivering difficult news with gentleness. But even so, something in his eyes made my stomach tighten. "My security team has been monitoring the situation," he said carefully, "and it appears Jordan and Sabrina are still in Dubai." I blinked, surprised by the rush of heat that flooded my chest. "Still here," I whispered. Why Samir hesitated, then exhaled slowly. "Because they have run into complications. Financial complications." His tone was diplomatic, but the meaning struck with perfect clarity. Something cold and sharp curled inside me, not satisfaction exactly, but a vindication that tasted like justice. "What kind of complications?" I asked, and my voice sounded strangely steady. Samir took a folder from the table beside him, one I hadn't noticed before. "Your son's credit card. Your credit card is maxed out. They cannot afford their hotel, their meals, or their return flights. They have spent far beyond their means." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. For so long, I had been the one quietly absorbing the consequences of Jordan's choices. Now, for the first time in 30 years, the consequences belonged entirely to him. "There is more," Samir continued, gently. "They have been contacting the American embassy claiming you vanished. They are telling officials that they fear you were kidnapped." I stared at him, unable to decide if I wanted to laugh or scream. "Kidnapped," I echoed. "By whom? Bellhop's housekeepers? My own dignity?" Samir turned the folder toward me, revealing blurry photos of reporters outside the embassy gates. "They have taken the story public," he said. "There is a hashtag trending online, Find Evelyn. They claim you disappeared under suspicious circumstances, and they fear the worst." My heart thumped painfully. "They're pretending to be worried," I murmured. After stealing everything and leaving me on a bench, Samir nodded solemnly. "It appears so, and there is more." He flipped to another page. "A fundraising campaign. They are collecting donations to support the search for their missing mother. They have already raised over $15,000. The world tilted sideways. They're profiting from my disappearance." I stood abruptly, the garden spinning around me. Jasmine-scented air felt suddenly too sweet, too warm, pressing against my lungs. I paced the stone path while Samir remained still, giving me space. "They abandoned me," I whispered, "and now they're playing grieving children for money." The betrayal felt like a second blow from the same knife. I stopped walking, forcing myself to breathe. "What do we do?" Samir rose and approached slowly, as if approaching a wounded animal that needed both caution and compassion. "We do nothing," he said softly, "until you decide. This is your choice, Evelyn. Your pain. Your boundary to draw. I will support whatever decision you make." His words settled into me like a warm weight anchoring me. For so long I had felt like a leaf blown around by Jordan's needs, Jordan's crises, Jordan's manipulations. Now someone was asking me what I wanted, perhaps for the first time in my adult life. I sat back down, folding my hands and staring at the manicured roses, their petals glowing in the sun. "Let them worry," I said at last, my voice low but certain. "Let them wonder where I am and what I know. Let them sit with the consequences they crafted." Samir nodded slowly, pride flickering in his gaze. "As you wish." 3 days passed like a waking dream, days that felt suspended between past and future. Samir showed me his hospitals where nurses greeted him with affection and reverence. He introduced me to doctors who spoke with their hands pressed over their hearts, thanking him for opportunities he'd given them. Everywhere we went, he walked with the confidence of a man who had earned every inch of respect through compassion and brilliance. And everywhere we went, he included me not as a guest, but as someone whose presence mattered. In quiet moments, tea on the terrace at 8 a.m., slow walks along marble corridors, late-night conversations under an orange moon, I began to feel something I hadn't felt in decades. Wanted, seen, not for what I provided, not for what I sacrificed, but for who I was. Samir remembered details I had forgotten about myself, how I used to hum under my breath when I concentrated, how I organized my notes by color during nurse training, how I always tied my apron twice around my waist when I baked. On the third evening, as the sky melted into smoky lavender, he sat beside me on the terrace and took my hands. His voice trembled faintly as he said, "Evelyn, stay in Dubai, stay with me." I felt the world narrow to the space between our hands. He rushed on gently as if afraid he might overwhelm me. Not forever, not immediately, just stay long enough to see what could be. Let me show you a life where you do not have to beg for affection or trade love for survival. Let me love you the way I could not when we were young. Something inside me shifted a door opening to warmth after a lifetime of cold corridors. But before I could answer, the phone in his pocket buzzed sharply. He checked the screen, his expression darkening. "It's Omar," he murmured. "Head of security." He stepped away, speaking quickly in Arabic, his tone sharpening with every sentence. When he returned, he looked at me with a gravity that stole my breath. "Evelyn," he said, "your son is stirring up an international incident." Samir placed his phone down slowly, as if bracing the air around us for what he was about to say. I felt my chest tighten, the calmness of the evening collapsing in on itself like a dying star. "What now?" I asked. Though part of me already knew, Jordan had found a new level of foolishness to descend into. Samir exhaled, his voice steady, but edged with disbelief. "Your son is at the American embassy again. This time, he brought reporters with him." For a full heartbeat, I simply stared at him, unsure if I had misheard. "Reporters," I repeated. For what Samir's brows pulled together in that concerned way I was growing too familiar with. "He is claiming you have been kidnapped by extremists. He's demanding swift government intervention to find you." My mouth fell open, and for a moment, no words came out at all. "Extremists," I finally whispered. "They left me on a bench outside a luxury hotel. What extremists' concierge services?" But Samir wasn't smiling. He nodded grimly. "The story has spread across social media. People are sharing old photos of you calling for international action. Omar says the embassy is preparing to reach out formally to local authorities. If this continues, it could escalate quickly." My jaw clenched so hard that pain shot through my temples. "He's creating a global spectacle," I murmured. "He's pretending to be the devoted son while raising money and exploiting my disappearance." Samir opened the folder that Omar had delivered earlier. "There is also the matter of the fundraising page," he said. "They are telling donors that every moment counts, that you may be in danger." I shook my head in disbelief. "Samir, they are using me. Again. Even now." His voice softened. "We need to decide how you want this to end." I stood, my hands trembling with a mix of fury and heartbreak. "I want to see him," I said at last. "Face to face. Public, safe, controlled. I want to tell him exactly what he's done." Samir's gaze held mine steady and protective. "If that is what you want," he said, "I will arrange it." That was how the next morning I found myself in a private conference room at a prestigious Dubai hotel, dressed in a deep blue designer gown chosen by Samir's stylists, my hair elegantly swept back and real diamonds resting against my collarbone. I looked nothing like the woman Jordan had abandoned. I looked like a woman resurrected. And when Jordan and Sabrina walked in, their eyes widened in horror and confusion, as if confronted with a ghost they expected to remain missing. Jordan's voice cracked as he sputtered, "Mom, are you okay? We've been frantic." I sat very still, hands folded in my lap, letting the silence stretch until it became a mirror for their guilt. "Have you?" I replied softly. "Is that why you charged $8,000 to my card and left me with nothing? Was that frantic?" His face flushed scarlet. "That was a misunderstanding." Sabrina stepped forward, her tone dripping false sweetness. Evelyn, darling, sometimes elderly people become confused when they are under stress. I am not confused, I said, my voice sharp as glass. I remember every single detail, and I am done pretending otherwise. Jordan turned to Samir, suddenly aware of the man seated beside me. "Who are you?" he demanded. "What have you done to my mother?" Samir spoke with a calm authority that made the entire room shift. "I am Sheikh Dr. Samir al-Hassan," he said, "and your mother is here as my honored guest. She is safe, she is free, and she has chosen to be here." The word chosen landed like a stone in a still pond. Jordan glanced between us, visibly calculating the wealth he sensed in the man defending me. Sabrina's eyes lit up with greedy possibility. I rose slowly, feeling the confidence of the past days settle around me like armor. "Jordan, I began you stole from me. You took my card, my identity, my belongings, and my trust. Then you exploited my disappearance for profit." He swallowed hard. "We were drowning in bills," he argued, desperation creeping into his voice. "We just needed a little help. You needed help, so you left me on the street," I asked. "With no phone, no money, no passport. You decided your mother's survival was less important than your vacation." Sabrina attempted a shaky smile. "Families forgive mistakes." I met her gaze coldly. "You are not my family." Jordan's voice cracked. "Mom, you raised me better than this. You taught me forgiveness. I also taught you consequences, I said, and that people earn trust through their actions. You have not acted like a son for a very long time." Samir's assistant Nadia entered then with another folder. She whispered something to Samir, whose expression hardened. "The banks confirmed it," he said quietly. "Jordan and Sabrina opened 3 credit cards in your name, online, 2 weeks before the trip." My breath left me in a sharp exhale. "You planned this," I whispered. "This wasn't a mistake. It was a setup." Jordan reached for me, panic in his eyes. "Mom, please let me explain." But I stepped back. There was nothing left to explain. I walked toward the door, pausing only once to look at the son I had spent 33 years breaking myself to raise. "Donate every penny of that fundraiser," I said. "If you keep even $1, Samir's lawyers will pursue you in both countries." Samir added calmly, "And the banks will be contacted this afternoon to report the identity theft." Sabrina's voice went shrill. "But what are we supposed to do?" I turned one last time. "Figure it out," I said, just like I had to. And then I walked away, feeling the weight of an entire lifetime lifting with every step I took. The door to the conference room closed softly behind us, and with that single sound, an entire chapter of my life shut forever. I stood in the quiet, feeling air fill my lungs more fully than it had in years. The hallway smelled faintly of sandalwood and polished stone, and the world outside the windows shimmered in warm desert light. Samir slipped his hand into mine, not to lead me, not to claim me, but simply to offer steady presence. "How do you feel?" he asked gently. I took a long breath, letting the answer rise from somewhere deep inside. "Like I can breathe again," I said. "For the first time in a long time, I feel free." We walked to the car together, and I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Jordan and Sabrina's voices were just fading echoes behind a closed door, and whatever chaos awaited them belonged to them alone now. As Samir's driver opened the door, I glanced at Samir, this man who had waited 40 years without expecting anything from me, who had listened, understood, and held space for my unraveling without judgment. In his eyes I saw not pity, but respect. Something warm and certain stirred in my chest. I was not alone. I had not been abandoned. Fate had simply redirected me. 6 months passed, and the transformation unfolded gently, quietly, one sunrise at a time. I adapted to Dubai in ways I never expected. The sounds of the call to prayer at dawn, the rustle of palm fronds in the courtyard, the scent of dates and cardamom at breakfast, these became the rhythm of my new life. Samir kept his promise to give me space as I rebuilt myself. He never rushed me, never pushed, only asked how I felt, what I wanted, what dreams I had once buried beneath motherhood and responsibility, and little by little I began to unearth them. Our wedding was small, private, intimate. I wore a champagne-colored dress with delicate embroidery that shimmered in the evening light. Samir cried when he saw me, real tears sliding down the face of a man whose life had molded him into stone for decades. When he took my hands and whispered, "I have waited half my life to find you again," my heart cracked open in a way I hadn't known was possible at 66. We married in his garden, surrounded by jasmine vines and soft lantern light. The fountain behind us glowed in pale gold, and a warm breeze carried laughter and music through the air. Somewhere deep inside, the woman who once sat on a cold bench with nothing felt herself step firmly into a new beginning. Our honeymoon in Morocco was a dream threaded with color and sound. Samir led me through the bustling Medina of Marrakesh, where vendors teased us with spices, fabrics, and sweet pastries. We wandered through hidden courtyards, lounged on rooftop terraces, and watched sunsets stain the sky crimson and gold. He treated me like a partner, not a burden. Like a woman he admired, not a tool he used. Every moment we shared stitched together something in me that had long been torn. When we returned to Dubai, life settled into a gentle rhythm. Samir would visit his hospitals. I would join him sometimes, walking the halls that hummed with purpose and care. Nurses greeted me warmly, many remembering stories Samir had told about a young American woman who once helped him believe he could succeed. In those interactions, I felt a sense of belonging I had never known before. And when Samir asked if I wanted to help shape the new women's health clinic, he was building something inside me lit with old purpose. I missed nursing. Not the exhaustion, not the night shifts, but the connection, the service, the humanity. One evening, as the sun dipped into the Persian Gulf in a blaze of rose and gold, I told Samir I wanted to invest my retirement savings into the clinic, not because he needed the money, but because I wanted to build something meaningful, something that bore my mark. His eyes softened with emotion. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Once you invest, it is no longer a safety net." I smiled, touching his cheek. "You are my safety net now, and I want to do something with the years I have left that matters." 3 years later, the Gretchen Al Hassan Women's Health Center opened its doors. We treated everyone, wealthy families, migrant workers, struggling mothers. No one was turned away for lack of funds. I designed programs for postpartum support, mental health outreach, and community wellness. Women hugged me in hallways. Mothers brought babies for me to meet babies who had been delivered because our clinic existed. I discovered a purpose that didn't drain me, but filled me. For the first time, I wasn't giving from emptiness. I was giving from abundance. As for Jordan, news traveled in small, infrequent ripples. The identity theft charges had followed him home. Their house was lost to foreclosure. Sabrina dropped out of medical school. They worked retail jobs to stay afloat. Sometimes guilt would creep in like a shadow, but then I would remember that love does not require self-destruction, and forgiveness does not mean returning to what broke you. One afternoon, Martha, my old neighbor back in the States, sent word that Jordan had come by the house asking for a forwarding address. She told him, as I had instructed her, that I was safe, happy, and building a new life. Later that night, I received a text from an unknown number. It was Jordan. He wrote, "I saw the announcement about your clinic. I'm proud of you, Mom. I hope you're happy." I stared at the message for a long moment, waiting for the guilt to rise. But it didn't. Only understanding, quiet and bittersweet. I typed back, "Thank you. I am happy." And that was the truth. I didn't add anything else. Some doors are better left closed, not out of bitterness, but out of peace. On my 67th birthday, Samir surprised me with a small ceremony at the clinic. He unveiled a plaque at the entrance that read, "Dedicated to women everywhere who found the courage to start over." I felt tears slip down my cheeks as I traced the letters with trembling fingers. That woman was me, the one who sat on a bench in a foreign country believing her life was over, the The one who had thought love and purpose belonged only to youth. The one who never imagined her greatest joy would bloom after her greatest heartbreak. As the sun set in glowing ribbons across the Dubai sky, Samir took my hand and asked softly, "Any regrets?" I looked out at the horizon, at the clinic we built, at the life we'd woven together like a tapestry of second chances. "Only one," I said truthfully, "that it took me so long to realize I deserved to be happy. And now I want to ask you, if life offered you a second chance at joy, at love, at becoming the person you once dreamed of being, would you take it? Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved in order to save yourself? I would love to hear your stories." If this journey touched you, remember to like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more stories like this. And tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I want to know how far this story reaches.